how does a joke about a single, uncooperative cricket bat connect to a $1 trillion AI son, the Vatican, and, an arrogant pitch to fix a sovereign nation's democracy for exactly $30 million?
Yeah, that is the $30 million question.
Exactly. So today we are pulling apart a digital time capsule from May 2026.
And this isn't just any webpage. We are looking at a highly specific, intensely dense blog called Netizen. It's authored by Paramendra Kumar Bhagat.
Right.
And it's not just an article. It is this living ecosystem of a very, very distinct worldview.
Yeah, the nucleus of the page is a satirical essay. It's titled From Landlines to AI Thrones, Why Silicon Valley's Modest Dudes Are Low-Key Running the World. And it has a great subtitle.
Oh, I love the subtitle. And Why Politics is Jealous.
Yes, exactly. But the essay, it really only scratches the surface. The surrounding architecture, the metadata, the embedded tweets, the dozens of self-published book titles in the sidebar, and all those curated news headlines. It just weaves together this massive tapestry of technological, political, and spiritual ambition.
It really does.
So our mission today is pure analysis. We are putting on our anthropologist hats to explore this author's framing for you, the listener.
But, before we dive into the deep end, we need to state our parameters clearly. This source material touches on some highly polarized political figures, controversial geopolitical strategies, global trade dynamics, all of that.
Yeah, it gets pretty intense.
Extremely intense. So we are strictly examining the ideas as they are presented in this text. We are maintaining absolute neutrality here.
Right. We are not validating these political strategies.
No, not at all. Nor are we endorsing any of the viewpoints. We're simply decoding a very specific artifact from 2026.
Perfect. So let's jump right in. At the very top of this tech blog, there is a single foundational sentence that basically frames everything else.
Oh yeah, I know the one you mean.
It says, the impending age of abundance was prophesied in the scriptures thousands of years ago.
Yeah, that is quite the opener.
I have to stop us right there. We are looking at a 2026 blog that is just obsessed with venture capital, artificial intelligence, logistics, all the hard tech stuff.
Right.
Yet it opens with ancient scripture. Are we seeing a new framework here? Is advanced technology, specifically things like agentic AI, being treated as the literal fulfillment of religious prophecy?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the author is attempting to merge two traditionally opposing domains.
Okay, what do you mean?
So on one hand, you have Silicon Valley techno-optimism, and on the other, ancient Eastern spiritual concepts. If you look at the sidebar listing the author's books, you see titles like Lumina AI, The $1 Trillion Sun.
Sounds like a massive startup pitch.
Exactly, or Himalayan Compute. These sound like aggressive venture pitches, but sitting right next to them are titles like Kalkiism, The Economic and Spiritual Blueprint for an Age of Abundance. And there are also mentions of karmoism.
Wow. It's like when early humans didn't understand lightning, right? So they just invented Zeus to explain it.
That is a really great analogy.
In 2026, technologists are staring at these advanced AI black boxes that operate on logic they can barely even trace. So they are practically inventing a new digital theology to cope with it.
Yeah, that is exactly what's happening.
So what exactly is Kalkiism in this context? Because that term comes up a lot.
So Kalki, in Hindu eschatology, is the final incarnation of Vishnu. He is prophesied to appear at the end of the current epoch to basically rid the world of darkness and usher in a golden age.
Oh, I see. A golden age of abundance.
Exactly. The psychological shift happening in 2026, it's just profound. As technology reaches these near omnipotent capabilities, human beings are reaching backward for theological frameworks. They need a way to process the shock of abundance.
Because it's too big to comprehend otherwise.
Right. The author posits that achieving artificial general intelligence isn't merely a feat of engineering. It is the actual manifestation of this ancient prophecy.
So Kalkiism is being pitched as an economic blueprint for a society that no longer operates on scarcity. That really raises the philosophical stakes for the entire page, doesn't it?
It does. It changes the entire context.
When the author talks about AI or politics, they aren't just discussing quarterly earnings. They're outlining the mechanics of building a prophesied utopia.
Yes. The baseline assumption here is that this technological revolution is spiritually mandated.
Which creates a really fascinating juxtaposition when you actually look at the architects of this revolution. I mean, you would expect the builders of a prophesied golden age to be these mythical heroes, right?
Yeah, with these larger-than-life origin stories.
But the main satirical essay completely deflates that expectation. The text actively mocks the traditional American log cabin myth.
Right, the whole Abraham Lincoln chopping wood in a blizzard to build character trope.
Exactly. The author argues that in 2026, the power move is the exact opposite. It is about growing up with just enough technology to get, quote, dangerously inspired.
Dangerously inspired. I love that phrasing.
Right. They point to Sundar Pichai of Google, whose childhood flex was just having a single working landline. They call it his analog Google Gemini.
An analog Gemini. That is so funny.
He spoke into the static, and the static spoke back. And the text points out that now, Sergey Brin, the guy who literally invented Google search, reports to Pichai and fills out HR performance self-assessments.
It really highlights the absurdity of corporate power structures. And the text also profiles Satya Nadella, pointing out that he didn't grow up soldering circuit boards in a garage or anything.
No, he had one cricket bat.
Right. One cricket bat. The author describes it as one wooden stick with commitment issues.
The new walking uphill both ways in the snow is literally, I only had dial-up internet and a cricket bat.
And the cricket bat remains silent on the matter, according to the text.
It is hilarious. But, the insight here isn't just that tech bros are modest or whatever.
No, there's a deeper point.
It's that the currency of power has officially flipped. It went from physical endurance to cognitive leverage. The blistered hands of the 19th century have just been replaced by the unbroken focus of the 21st.
That is spot on. The author is highlighting a massive structural shift here. For centuries, physical struggle demonstrated your dominance over the material world. Chopping the wood, building the cabin.
Sweating it out.
Yeah. Today, unparalleled global leverage requires only a tiny thread of infrastructure, a single landline.
And just incredible cognitive application.
Exactly. The irony the text presents is really sharp. Think about it. If Nadella had used that wooden bat to chop wood, he might have fulfilled the old American myth and become president.
Oh, that's wild to think about.
But because he merely focused on it, he has to settle for running Microsoft and making AI write passive-aggressive emails.
Right. What a consolation prize. Running Microsoft. But okay, if these tech leaders conquered the digital world with a landline and a bat, how does someone conquer the chaotic, physical realm of American politics in 2026? Because the author transitions right into a profile of Vivek Ramaswamy to answer that.
They do. And the author describes Ramaswamy as a literal glitch in the matrix.
A glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, claiming he won every single county in Ohio. Now, the text satirizes Ohio as the statistical heart of America, consisting mostly of gas stations, raccoons, and corn.
Gas stations, raccoons, and corn. That is quite the visual.
It is. But the text notes that local politicians, guys like J.D. Vance, never managed that kind of total sweep.
And the author claims Ramaswamy succeeded by acting like a billionaire version of Abraham Lincoln, conducting a very polite Viking invasion.
A polite Viking invasion. The contradictions are just great.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The most aggressive claim is this wild scientific and religious analogy. The author writes, the Bible is Newton's gravity, Hinduism is Einstein's relativity.
Yeah, that is a huge statement.
I mean, how does this bold comparison serve the author's argument about modern political strategy? Because it seems like a leap.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is diagnosing a leap in the actual physics of political warfare.
Okay, walk me through that.
When they say the Bible is Newton's gravity, reliable, foundational, keeping apples from floating away, they're referring to the traditional political playbook. It works on a linear plane.
Sure, shaking hands, kissing babies.
Right. But calling Hinduism Einstein's relativity implies a multidimensional strategy. The author is saying Ramaswamy introduced nonlinear, high-level, abstract intellectualism to a very traditional landscape.
The text actually mentions him casually quoting the Bhagavad Gita and discussing return on invested capital with voters in rural Ohio.
Which just sounds completely absurd, doesn't it?
Totally. I mean, you don't pitch venture capital metrics at a gas station. That's not how politics works.
You don't know. Unless you pair it with absolute algorithmic ground-level execution.
Right, the ground game.
Yeah, the author jokes that Ramaswamy hired Biharis to run his ground game. He describes them as guys who know how to win elections like they know how to fix your router at 2 a.m.
It's the ultimate fusion, really. High-level philosophical abstraction married to relentless tech support brute force.
It perfectly contrasts the tech origin story with the political one. In tech, victory comes from quiet, isolated innovation. The landline, the bat.
But in politics,
In politics, you have to treat the statistical center of the country like a target for a polite Viking invasion. You need massive scale and flawless execution.
so the takeaway for you, listening to this, is pretty clear. Modern political dominance is no longer about the local diner tour. It is about network effects, applied physics, and comprehensive systems management.
Which brings us to a part of the text that takes this systems management approach and scales it to an almost terrifying level.
Yes, embedded below the essay is a tweet from the author that applies this startup logic to entire sovereign nations.
Oh, this part is wild.
The author writes, "Also, I offer to fix South Africa for 30M. This is you investing in democracy tech. A Gen Z revolution in SA, like in Nepal, will do the trick. Kill the criminality, kill the corruption. I have a track record."
That is just an astonishing pitch.
Yeah, I have a really hard time taking this at face value. I mean, $30 million is a Series A funding round. That's what a Silicon Valley startup raises just to prove their software works at scale. It is an experimental, high-risk phase.
Exactly. It's early stage.
So pitching that to fix a massive, complex nation's democracy, is this just incredible tech bro hubris, or is there an actual genuine mechanism being proposed here?
To decode this, we have to cross-reference the author's bibliography in the sidebar again. We see titles like A Reorganized UN Built from Ground Up.
Oh, wow. Fixing the UN, too.
Yep. Also, Gen Z Kranti, which means Gen Z Revolution, and the 20% Growth Revolution, Nepal's Path to Prosperity.
So this is a recurring theme for them.
Absolutely. The 2026 mindset presented here views politics not as a humanistic endeavor, not as sociology. It views it as an engineering problem.
But how does an app or an algorithm kill corruption?
Yeah.
You can't just deploy a software patch to stop a physical bribe from taking place.
Well, the premise of democracy tech relies on structural replacement, not behavioral modification.
Yeah, explain that.
If you view a nation's government as a legacy operating system that is just full of malware, meaning corruption, you don't ask the malware to behave better. You don't ask people to just be more honest.
Right. That never works anyway.
You rewrite the underlying code. In 2026, this likely implies deploying decentralized identity systems, fully transparent ledger allocations for public funds, and smart contracts that bypass local bureaucrats entirely.
Oh, so taking the middleman out completely.
Exactly. If a public works project triggers a payment only when an AI satellite verifies that the road has been physically paved, you've killed the bribery loop via architecture. The bureaucrat never even touches the money.
You are treating a nation of millions as a user base. The philosophical implication of that is just staggering. It removes all historical and sociological baggage and simply states, hey, the code is broken. Let's deploy an agile Gen Z workforce as our engineers and push an update.
It's a radical. The takeaway is that governance itself is being reclassified as legacy software.
But to even entertain the idea of debugging an entire country, you require an engine capable of processing that massive level of complexity.
You need artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And not just any AI.
Right. Which takes us straight to the sidebar's tech headlines, because to understand this prophesied age of abundance, we have to look at the tools that are supposedly building it.
And the picture of AI in May 2026 is a wildly contradictory mosaic. It really is.
It is. On one side, you have a Wired headline. It reads, "Why the Vatican invited Anthropic to the Pope's AI encyclical presentation."
The Vatican.
Yes. And right below it, a New York Times headline, "At the AI epicenter, technologists dismiss Pope Leo's warnings." It feels like we are watching Galileo and the church all over again. But this time, the church is hosting the keynote presentation, and Silicon Valley is in the back row, leaving them on read.
That is exactly the dynamic. The tension here reveals the dual realities of 2026. You see, an encyclical is one of the highest forms of papal teaching.
It's a big deal.
A huge deal. It means AI has transcended commerce. It is now a matter of global theology and ethics. The author highlights agentic AI exploding in 2026. And we need to be very clear on what that means for the listener.
Yeah, let's define agentic AI, because it's not what we used to have.
Right. Agentic AI isn't a chatbot waiting for you to type a prompt. It operates on recursive loops. You give it a high-level goal, and it breaks that goal down. It uses tools, browses the internet, writes its own code, corrects its own errors, and executes the task completely independently.
It's the trillion-dollar sun the author references in their book title, a system capable of essentially writing the blueprint for Talkiism itself.
That is the divine, world-saving narrative.
Yeah.
But the second reality of 2026 is found in the operational friction.
The annoying day-to-day stuff.
Exactly. The headlines expose a deep frustration with the mundane realities of this technology. For instance, The Verge reports, "Nobody wants to tell me why they only listen to their own Suno slop."
Suno slop. I love that term. It is the perfect term for AI-generated algorithmic junk food. It's music that is just catchy enough to be addictive, but it's entirely devoid of a human soul.
It's just sonic filler. And the enterprise world is suffering too. VentureBeat has a headline warning about prompt debt, retrieval debt, and evaluation debt.
Okay, we hear the term technical debt all the time in software, but let's explain these specific AI mechanics to the listener.
Sure. So prompt debt happens when a company builds its entire workflow around specific, highly engineered prompts.
Right.
And then the underlying AI model updates and it breaks everything overnight. Suddenly your prompts don't yield the same results.
Which would be a nightmare for a business.
Then you have retrieval debt. This is when your vector databases get clogged with outdated corporate documents. So the AI confidently hallucinates bad advice based on like an employee handbook from 3 years ago.
Oh man, and then evaluation debt.
Evaluation debt is the crushing human cost of having to double-check the AI's work just to ensure it hasn't made a catastrophic error. Because it sounds so confident even when it's wrong.
So add to all that the author's own blog post title, Robots Unionize on Day 10.
Yes.
The grand vision of abundance is basically bottlenecked by bureaucratic exhaustion. Humans in 2026 built a godlike machine, but they spend their days managing its paperwork and listening to its fake pop songs.
That is the irony of the era.
The ultimate takeaway here is this duality. We are building a digital deity, but we are stuck doing its administrative chores.
But, you know, software is totally meaningless if it can't move atoms.
Exactly. You can write code instantly, but you still cannot teleport a tomato. How does this 2026 worldview solve the tomato problem?
Well, the author provides a very specific term for this solution. They call it physical AWS. The subhead is how the logistics cloud will reshape global commerce.
Okay, for our listeners who follow tech, we know Amazon Web Services, AWS, revolutionized the internet by making server space invisible.
Right, you don't buy physical servers anymore.
You don't run wires, you don't worry about cooling fans, you just ping an API and scale your compute globally in seconds. The author is suggesting we apply that exact API-driven architecture to the physical supply chain.
And the text supports this with some heavily curated headlines. We see that SpaceX is pressuring the Pentagon, American Airlines is putting Starlink on all its flights.
Ubiquitous connectivity.
Exactly. A logistics startup called Stored raises $250 million at a $3 billion valuation. Gizmodo is reporting on a Ferrari EV designed by Joni Ive, and the author also heavily advocates for Hyperloop over traditional high-speed rail.
So let's run a thought experiment on this because it's a wild concept. If a shipping container acts like a data packet on the internet, what happens to human labor?
It gets completely abstracted away.
Right. If supply chain managers are replaced by logistics API calls, an AI in Tokyo can dynamically route a physical, say, a pallet of microchips through a Hyperloop in California, then onto an autonomous truck, and straight to a doorstep in Ohio without a single human making a routing decision.
The physical friction of distance is just removed. Starlink provides the low-latency connectivity required to keep every single node, every truck, every drone, every robotic arm perfectly synchronized. The Stored valuation alone proves the market is heavily betting on this transition.
I need to challenge the resilience of this vision, though, because a digital cloud can reroute around a down server in milliseconds.
Right.
But if we build an economy based on zero physical friction and just-in-time API routing, what happens during a localized power grid failure? Or, you know, a geopolitical choke point?
Like a canal blockage.
Exactly. If the Suez Canal gets blocked or a solar flare knocks out Starlink over the Pacific, does the entire prophesied age of abundance just collapse because it lacks physical redundancy?
That is the big risk.
Yeah.
The author's premise likely assumes that an agentic AI managing this physical AWS would preemptively model those vulnerabilities. It would build decentralized, redundant physical paths, much like packet switching does on the internet.
But you're dealing with physical reality, not light in a fiber optic cable.
Right. However, the geopolitical vulnerability is massive. You are shifting global power from those who control the oil to those who control the orbital satellite mesh and the physical routing algorithms.
Wow. So the blistered hands of the 19th century have been replaced by the unbroken focus of the 21st, and the shipping lanes of the 20th century have been replaced by orbital bandwidth.
That is exactly right.
The takeaway is that logistics is no longer about transportation. It is about applied data science in the physical realm.
Which naturally transitions us to the final layer of this whole worldview.
Right, because if governance is a software patch and logistics is an API call, how do you actually price the tomato? What is the fuel for this entire system? Because looking at the financial layer on this page, traditional economics seems to be actively dismantling itself.
Completely. The source text is just awash in decentralized finance and crypto. Kathy Wood is predicting Bitcoin will hit $1.25 million.
A casual million-plus prediction.
Right. A company called Strive adds over 1,000 Bitcoin to its balance sheet, and they're treating it as legitimate digital credit. But simultaneously, a headline highlights a meme coin trader turning $341 into $48,000 on a platform called Pump.Fun.
Pump.Fun, what a time to be alive.
And we also see Spain blocking prediction markets like Polymarket and Kalshi. And the author's books explicitly state their thesis. We have velocity money, crypto, karma, and the end of traditional economics. And another one, AI and robotics break capitalism.
Okay, I am not buying the author's premise that velocity money solves scarcity. Look at the contradiction here. We have massive institutional players hoarding Bitcoin as bedrock collateral, right? The ultimate mathematical scarcity.
Yes.
And right next to them, in the exact same breath, retail traders are turning pocket change into a year's salary on a joke coin via Pump.Fun. That doesn't look like an economic evolution to me. It looks like we just digitized panic.
Digitized panic. That is a great way to put it.
If money is moving at the speed of internet memes, how does a society price bread?
Well, it looks like panic through the lens of traditional capitalism, which relies on static, stable stores of value. But the author argues that AI and robotics break capitalism by making labor and physical goods fundamentally abundant.
Okay, if goods are abundant, what does money do?
If goods are abundant, hoarding capital makes less sense. Money shifts from being a store of scarce value to becoming a high-velocity protocol. It becomes the lubricant of the network.
So Bitcoin acts as the immutable gold standard of the digital age, anchoring the whole system. But the meme coins represent the new velocity.
Exactly. Consider the alternative.
Right.
If you try to run an economy where AI generates virtually infinite output using legacy fiat currency, inflation just destroys the entire system.
Because there's too much stuff and the money can't keep up, or vice versa.
Right. Velocity money proposes that value transfer must become entirely frictionless to match the frictionless production of the physical AWS.
And what about the ban on Polymarket in Spain? How does that fit in?
Well, prediction markets are decentralized information engines. They use financial velocity to aggregate human and AI knowledge to literally predict the future. Legacy regulatory systems view that kind of decentralized consensus as a massive threat to their control over financial narratives.
They don't want the crowd predicting the future.
Exactly. They are resisting the new protocol. So the takeaway here is that financial transactions in the age of abundance are less about zero-sum extraction and much more about frictionless energy flow. It is the economic blueprint of calculism fully realized.
Wow, we have covered an immense amount of ground today.
We really have. It's a dense text.
We unpacked a 2026 digital time capsule that completely redefined the origin story of power. It replaced the physical struggle of the log cabin with the cognitive leverage of a landline and a single cricket bat.
Right.
We explored how political strategy evolved into a multidimensional Viking invasion, blending ancient scriptures with an algorithmic, router-fixing ground game.
Which is just a staggering combination.
We scrutinized the audacity of democracy tech, questioning the mechanics of treating citizens as a user base just to debug a nation's legacy code. And we watched the Vatican grapple with the moral weight of agentic AI while enterprise workers drowned in the prompt debt and algorithmic slop of their own creation.
The Suno slop.
Yes, the Suno slop. We mapped out the physical AWS, a world where supply chains act like data packets, removing the friction of distance entirely. And finally, we debated velocity money, where the breakdown of traditional capitalism paves the way for frictionless value transfer.
The author has really sketched a cohesive, highly pressurized blueprint for a completely new phase of human civilization here.
They have, and it leaves me with one final lingering thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Well, let's hear it.
If we are truly accelerating into this prophesied age of abundance, if we really reach a point where agentic AI handles all the heavy cognitive load, where the physical AWS makes logistics completely invisible, and where we can theoretically debug a nation's flaws with a software patch, at what point does human struggle stop being a necessary origin story?
That is a deep question.
When does the agonizing frustration of staring at a single, uncooperative cricket bat stop being the crucible that builds our character and start becoming a law at art? If the future is totally frictionless, do we eventually find that convenience has actually robbed us of our defining character arcs?
It makes you wonder what will become when everything is easy.
Exactly. It's something to think about the next time you find yourself frustrated by a limitation or an obstacle in your way. Maybe that friction is exactly what you need to build your own leverage.
A great point to end on.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.